I need to catch up with you when we celebrate the EOAB.
Yes.
Both of us.
Okay, great. We're live. Go ahead.
Perfect. Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the special workshop of the Economic Opportunity Advisory Board. Welcome, everyone. We'll start out by asking if there are any citizens to be heard. And hearing none, we'll move to introductions. So if we just want to start in the room, I'm Melissa, I'm co-chair of the Economic Opportunity Advisory Board, and Forrest is ill, placing me in this uncomfortable and unsolicited position.
Ben, Director of Economic Development Department, Travel Council. I probably am the one that made Forrest ill last week at Go West. I'm well now, so.
Traveling is dangerous for getting bugs. Ashley Kornblatt, Western Spirit Cycling and Moab Chamber.
Chris Wilson, member of this board, and Kurt Coffee Mistress.
Randy Martin, representing the Moab Area Chamber of Commerce.
Melody McCandless, Grand County Commissioner.
Mary McGann, and I will be handing the reins over to Melody.
We so appreciate your service.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Mary.
We welcome Melody, and we really want to thank Mary for a lot of good work and a lot of good projects and a good legacy. So
Very good.
we want you. You're welcome at every meeting. These are all public meetings.
Oh,
and
we've
we
done
appreciate
so
your
much.
Yes.
I mean, if it hadn't been for this board, our childcare wouldn't be where it is. Our road crossing wouldn't be where it is. I mean, it's exciting how we're going to make Trail to Tomorrow a living document rather than something that's put on the shelf. And I ask you to keep alive my goal to have, more work with the Art Council to co-develop a private-public partnership so that we can get someone on board that's in charge of arts.
Absolutely. Yeah, my commitment.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
so
you,
much,
Mary.
Thank you,
So
Mary.
much.
And I will still.
Thank you so much, Mary.
Mary, don't
Mary,
forget that
Mary
first.
We'll miss you, Mary.
Yeah, take care.
We've got people online too.
Perfect. Let's go to our online folks that are joining.
I'm Jasmine Duncan. I'm a member of this board and the mayor of Castle Valley.
I'm Christian Olson, the Senior Associate Vice President, USU Moab.
Hi, everyone. Ben Alter, Assistant Economic Development Director. Not a member of the board, but very excited to be supporting the board today and always. And on that note, just want to say thank you all for making do with our odd meeting space today. Everything you see is crooked or strapped together intentionally. The amount of Wi-Fi in that room is surprisingly low. So a lot of wired connections. I'm operating over here in the Economic Development Office, and so if there's an issue, I'm glad to physically run over and help out. And in the meantime, I'm glad to help out from here, putting documents on the screen, taking some live notes, some edits, whatever is going to help the group today with what they're setting out to do. So please just lean on me as a resource. I'm here to kind of help you all and also not crowd that small room.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right, let's jump in. Just to kind of give some background, and I know that you haven't been here for this process. Other people have been here for parts of the process. Some people have been here for all of the process. So just to bottle up the process, we had the Trail to Tomorrow study, which had been commissioned, and the providers of that study were chosen, and the RFP was written, I think, by the previous EDD administration. And so if that process kind of got underway, and then you had a new department come in with EDD who sort of was handed a running horse in the middle of
They actually did wait for us to start.
Did they?
So we ran the
Okay.
whole project.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay. So there was some ownership of the EDD department then once that selection process had been made. And the Trail to Tomorrow process was a lengthy, I would say comprehensive, really deep dive, I guess, maybe into citizens, segments of the community, business community, all of the things. And then they returned a report that made recommendations. In an effort to make sure that that report and those recommendations didn't just sort of get shelved, we wanted to attempt to be able to bring that into a living, breathing, organic, actionable, I guess that's the most important word, actionable plan. So how do we get from these sort of larger concepts into smaller bite-sized chunks of concept into an actionable, boots on the ground plan out of what had been commissioned? So step one of that plan was I had drafted a document, and the purpose of the document that I had drafted for the group to review was to kind of take lived experience of being inside the community, because contractors are great and they're amazing and they do the best that they can and they're comprehensive and they do interviews, but also they lack the subtle nuances of what the lived experience of that community can be like. So how do we add those things in to get that to a place that's kind of middle ground, actionable? And then the next step of that process was Chris had volunteered to take that summary and roll it into a draft for the healthy economy section of the Grand County General Plan. And that's what we're here to talk about and review today. Is that kind of the summary?
Yeah, that sounds right. So yeah, so
would-
basically we're working on language from the Trails of Tomorrow study to update the general plan chapter on the economy, which would then get forwarded, if it's recommended by, if it goes sort of reaches consensus or decision-making consensus in this group, would get forwarded to the commission for you guys to look at and make action.
The previous general plan had like 2 sentences about the economy. And so we wanted to use that, the need for an update for that, as a way to also take the wisdom from the Trails to Tomorrow and distill it down to something that will really, really work, it make a difference in our economy. And I think the other goal was to go through this process to kind of get everyone on the same page, because if we don't agree on where we are, it's hard to go. It's hard to agree on where to go. So that's what we're really looking for is, so this is a pretty high level document that's broad consensus is what we're hoping for. And these guys have done a great job with the drafts. And our goal for today is to go through it, or what else?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. And with that, I will gleefully turn the reins over to Chris.
Awesome. Thanks, Melissa. Yeah, so I just in the time since Ben sent out the agenda, and I've worked with him on it a little bit before, put a couple of times together just to we have a lot, there's a big document, and I just want to make sure we get through that during our time here. So we don't have to be exactly on that schedule or anything like that, but I did throw up some time so we can kind of say all right, let's move on to the next section. And we can always come back to anything that needs extra work. Hey guys.
Here, we can fit you.
Jump in.
Sit us in here. Am I taking Ben's seat?
Go right ahead,
Ben is
Oh, I'm like,
online, yeah. Right across the way, but.
I'll sit here. You sit there.
All right.
So kind of you to give up your seat.
Just want to do quick introductions, just say hi guys, and then we can continue on the presentation.
Yeah, sorry.
No? Oh, you're fine, So Deborah, go ahead.
So I'm Deborah McKee. I'm the outreach manager for the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity.
And I'm Mark Hunter. I'm the commission administrator here in Grand County.
Excellent. Thank you both.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys all know Melody, so
I
just
don't.
wanna-
I don't.
Since
I was
she's
gonna
joining
say, I
us
know
as the
everybody
commission
else.
representative now
Okay.
from here
Yeah.
forward.
So, yeah, Mary graciously gave me her spot on this department. so
Okay,
I'm
great.
On board.
Well, nice
Melody
to meet
Hamlet.
you.
And I know Melody.
Mary was just here and was we didn't give her an appropriate thank you, but we recognize her, but she did a very nice handoff, so we want to show that we appreciate all
I
she's
know,
done.
I thought she was gonna stay for a little while. I didn't know she was gonna leave.
I am so glad that you are here because I've been dying to meet the new administrator because I've heard tell that you are Southern and would like to acknowledge and recognize and welcome like. Where are you from?
There goes our 10 minutes, Chris.
I didn't know that.
I'm from Arkansas.
All right, you got it down. Chris's agenda.
Sorry.
Here's the
Time
topic
box.
of
We got
stuff.
time box. Oh, okay. He writes that for me, by the way.
Okay, so yeah, just a quick note that today's meeting is just a workshop. So as my understanding is, we're not trying to get to any decisions or vote on anything today. We're just trying to make progress in the draft of this document so that we can bring it to a future meeting and then consider a recommendation to push it forward to the commission. But yeah,
That being
so
said, it's gonna be very interesting.
absolutely.
Because this is really.
Manage expectation.
We're trying to build a document that is the starting place for our economic conversations. And so we're really trying to set the stage and make sure, like, we can't go anywhere together if we're all starting from a different place. And so the general plan previously had a couple lines about the economy. And now that we did this big strategic plan and our committee's doing all this work, we wanted to get to recommend an amendment to the general plan that includes a deeper dive into how our economy works. And that way, if that works and we can get that through the process, then it sort of becomes the framework for a lot of future decisions about how we do things, because it gives us that starting point that we all agree to.
And actually, the previous general plan chapter on the economy called for a strategic plan to be created, which was the process, the trail to tomorrow, and then an update to be made. So it's like, in the general plan asked us to do this update to the general plan. So now we're trying to do it. So first of all, thanks to everyone that's already participated in this process. I mean, the document is from our meetings, from our conversations, from a previous workshop that we did on this. And then there's been some comments and feedback that we've gotten on this first draft that Ben and I put together to share with everyone. And really the idea of which you all have in front of you in the packet is to have something on paper that we can, use in a workshop setting. I mean, this isn't like, it can be changed. I have no problem having the writing that I did get totally reworked along the process, right? This is a community process and a community document, and I feel no ownership of it or the process. I just want us to be able to get to a place where we can all agree on a path forward. And I think that would be really helpful for all of us. So I don't think I need to necessarily spend a whole lot of time running through the specifics of the document. I did think I would say maybe a couple words on what I thought the goals were of the kind of overview section, and then the structure that I put forth. And then we will get into getting feedback from all of you on all of those things, and then more in terms of policy details as well. So on the opening or overview, it sort of seems to me that in that framing section, there are two goals that are a little bit competing with one another. And the first is a need to be succinct, to have something that, both for practical reasons of not, growing the document excessively, but also because it's a general plan and the focus of it should be the plan itself, right? So we want the setup to do a good job setting things up, but also to not overwhelm the document, right? So we do want to put some time into it, though, I think, because the setup is so important. And I think if we can just reframe things a little bit, then, hopefully we can use this as an opportunity to try to find something that our community as a whole can feel consensus about, can be on board with, and use this as a tool to move beyond the somewhat bifurcated view of the economy that some folks experience right now in the conversations about our economic future.
I would add that the reason that's so important is that we've been doing a lot of it's your fault, it's your fault. And the reality is there are macroeconomics at work out there in the universe that are affecting MOAB's prospects. And until we get to the point that we're really looking at those and understanding what our strengths are and really putting into our strengths, we're not going to win. So I think it's super important the way that you guys have laid this out so far.
Cool. And then, yeah, just a couple words on structure, and then I want to jump right into the conversation part where we get to your feedback. So I have 3 sort of basic sections in the document. They are the visitor
Chris,
economy.
do you want me to put it up on the screen? Would that help at all?
Sure. I mean, I think
Okay.
why not? Unless it's better for it's kind of up to you all who are on the Zoom, whatever's most useful, if you'd like to see the room or see the document, but that could be useful. So I'd say go for it.
Thanks. I'll put it up. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. So yeah, the first section is the visitor economy, right? Which we all know is like the driver, the motor of the Moab economy, of the Grand County economy. I think that my thoughts there is that it's really important to just recognize the huge importance of the visitor economy and its fundamental ties to our public lands, and to find ways to grow it that are in line with our community values. Next section that I have in there is fundamentals. And this is sort of comes right from the Trail to Tomorrow. So this is like solving basic problems within our economy, like bottlenecks in the economy. So things like housing, education, workforce, childcare. Those are the kind of things that I think, even if we had a different type of economy that wasn't a visitor economy predominantly, they would still be important issues. Like they're the fundamentals of any functioning economy. And these are specific issues that are, obvious within our community and need addressing. And then the third one, and this one I think is a little bit more challenging to decide how to frame it best, but is supporting local businesses. And I see it as a place for a few different things. Strategies to support entrepreneurs and small businesses, this idea of growing what is called out in the Trail to Tomorrow as tourism adjacent industries. So this is kind of like broadening the base without saying that like we need to like totally diversify the economy. It's like growing the base of our visitor economy. So that's things like the wedding industry. It could be like connecting food and food tourism, like our agriculture to our visitor economy, things like that. But it can also be a lot bigger than just that. And then I think also within that is supporting other industries besides just our visitor economies, right? So like we're talking about having a section in there for natural resources. There are other parts of the Grand County economy that aren't so directly tied to our visitors. So that stuff would be in that section as well. So anyway, there's obviously lots of other ways that you could do this in terms of the organization, and the Trail to Tomorrow is framed just a little bit differently in its sections, although pretty similarly. And then Melissa's document that she presented was like a couple of these line up perfectly, and one of them maybe doesn't line up quite as perfectly. She had 4 sections, so totally open to discussion on that. And so I think let's just jump in to the discussion and start with the beginning of the document, start with that setup section of the document, and just start soliciting feedback. I mean, what do you all think about the way that the setup is sort of framed? What's missing? Do you want this? I have it on my computer. Yeah.
So,
And I think, the idea here is for this to be like a brainstorm session. We don't all have to agree on everything. But if you have, if there is something that's said that's like, I really think it's different, obviously we should bring that up as well.
sure.
But we don't have to resolve everything today.
Well, one thing that I think we should do in framing this, that I don't think the project did well, is we're one of 29 counties, and we're very different from some of the counties we're compared to based on we don't have a convention business here. We don't have a business expense business here per se, like Salt Lake. We don't have a ski visit industry. And so I think we should incorporate, at least understand Kim Gardner and where we fit into some of these. One thing that really jumps out is, because I know every county is dealing with housing, but we have one of the higher rates of housing short-term rental properties. So I think we're at 18%. I think we're second behind Summit County. So what that means is 1 in every 5 houses is maybe a short-term rental. And that isn't every 5 houses on a block. That's the 5 high-end being built, see-through, probably, it is my opinion. So I just throw that out, that we should understand in reference that, that's definitely a performance indicator that we're headed more to a Telluride model than a Green River model. We also, while we have that, which shows that we have outside investors really looking at this location, I think we're also highly ranked in the amount of student lunch debt and those kind of things. So I think we just really need to understand the local resident versus the funding economy that's coming in. So, and I keep going back to this metric that I just want to keep saying until everyone can say it themselves, but we have more hotel rooms now than the city of Grand Junction, and they are 10x our population. Combined with that, we also have 1,000 short-term rentals, and looking at those occupancies all the time, it gives a very interesting metric of where we're at. That combined with one of the lowest healthcare providing models, is we get stress tested at certain points. So I just think we need to frame that we are part of a bigger picture that isn't just Moab's this one-off unique place that you just change it here. So,
Well, that was really a lot of key points packed into a statement. And I think that really those inefficiencies are what we're trying to solve. We don't want kids who are going to school hungry in this town. We don't want an oversupply of hotel rooms. We do want housing. Like we want to solve all those problems, and that's what this plan is trying to acknowledge. Here's the macro situation, and here's what we have to work with to grow our economy in a way that will solve those problems. So I kind of feel like those are all, everything you mentioned, I think is in the fundamentals really, and that it should be, these we are different, and then here are the metrics that show how we're different. But what we have to do is figure out how we can use this amazing place that we live in to work towards correcting those imbalances. Is that?
Yeah, I'm just,
Okay.
and another metric of that is just the amount of per capita TRT we provide in the state is, it pulls the doors off, so.
I think, so to echo what both of you said, like I wholeheartedly disagree, agree. And since this is a workshop, yeah, great, let's have conversations and let's have the really hard ones. And I feel like everything, Ben, that you just brought up, and then what you said, Ashley, echoes. Ben and I spent an hour on the phone with, I can't remember, help me with his name, Ben, with the Trail to Tomorrow group. He's the PhD who,
Jeremy?
yes, Jeremy went really deeply into the data and into the statistics. And just to underscore what Ben said, they found 11 of the communities that were the closest to us on all of those metrics. So they searched high and low, they moved all the rocks to find all of the gateway communities who would mirror the most closely, same challenges, same whatever. And we ranked 11th out of the 11 that they were able to find in all of the indicators of a really healthy, vibrant, balanced economy where people are thriving and have housing security and I think that the biggest catch-22 that you get into with economic development is if you want to develop an economy, you have to have an economy in a space where people can and want to live and thrive. So how do you get all of those things in place, which is why, Chris, you were saying it's the fundamentals also, is that community that is thriving, where the schools are schools that I want my kids to go to and I want whatever. So I feel like we've got that really challenging, complex economy, and this is our opportunity to pull it apart, take all of those assets and those resources that we have, and then make the best of those and just put a shovel in the ground somewhere, which is why I'm really excited about this process.
Yeah. I mean, what you just explained is the things we want to solve, right? And it's just a question of how, and so that's when we get into this, it's kind of like, how do we use the resources we have in Moab to solve those problems? Like, we know what they are, we know what we've got, how are we matching that up? And that's what we're really getting into trying to explain how to do. That's what we're hoping to give a framework for how we can do it. Kind of exciting. We might be able to get some of those numbers improved.
And I think the opening needs to feel real to people. while also feeling optimistic, right? And being optimistic and sort of pushing forward. So that's, I mean, tone-wise, I think that's also important that we
Sure.
get these things sort of spelled out right. So I don't know if does
Can
anybody.
I ask you that, Chris?
Yeah, please, Jasmine.
What you just said about that strong opening, I can, well, the opening that you originally had there, for one of the most beautiful places on the planet to be among the best places to live, play, work, and do business. I felt like that was stronger than the red line changes.
Okay.
Just stating that there's an opportunity to do that doesn't feel strong. We want to do that, and we should just say so.
Yeah, that was a direct quote from the Trail to Tomorrow that I think, yeah, can work.
I'm the one that made those suggestions, and I hear what you're saying, and I think that's fine. I just thought it read kind of funny. But that's fine. If you guys feel like it's stronger the way it originally was, and if it's a direct quote, then we should leave it alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we could revisit the wording, but I think I like Jasmine's point about that it's like, this is sort of like a mission statement more than just a statement of what the opportunity is.
Sure.
So it's, the wording can be a little bit stronger.
Well, I guess, and the reason I use the word opportunity is because we are way cooler than any other recreation economy. We have more natural resources than Park City, than Durango, than Chamonix. Like we have this incredible wealth of natural resources and activities that people can do here, but we're not right now. We aren't using those in a way that's delivering the kind of economy we want. So that's why I was kind of saying we can do it. We have the raw materials to do it, but we aren't doing it yet. But I think you're right. It's fine. Let's go back, and also if it's a direct quote from the
We can
plan.
put that in,
Yeah,
to
that's
like
fine.
make it more clear that it was a direct
Got
quote
it.
also.
Got it. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, other folks, especially people who haven't jumped in the conversation yet, if you have anything you'd like to add before we move on to the sort of structure of the document.
I have other stuff down the line.
In the intro section still, Jasmine?
No, I have stuff later down, so.
Okay, great. Well, should we move on to the structure? Awesome. Yeah, so I mean, I sort of set this up when I did my little intro today, but I mean, I think there are lots of ways that you can organize sort of the pillars of how we're going to move forward with, this general plan with the Grand County economy. Yeah, the way I set it up was visitor economy, fundamentals, and then supporting local businesses. What do people think? And do you prefer one of the alternatives that have been sort of used in these conversations we've had previously, or something different? And just to say also that like a lot of the policy stuff and the sort of details that go underneath these headings, like they're going to be there either way, right? Like if we'll just reorg them, a lot of them to whatever structure we choose here. So it's not like trashing this trashes the whole document at all. It's just a matter of how we organize things.
What would an alternative structure be? I kind of think, do
you want me to read you guys the other ones that have been presented?
Sure.
So I have them all right here. So yeah, what I just did was the one.
Visitor fundamentals, local business.
Yeah, Trail to Tomorrow does it as fundamentals. So that one's the same. Mm-hmm. Tourism adjacent, grow tourism adjacent businesses and support entrepreneurship. That's similar to my supporting local businesses one, right, but a different way of framing it. And then their third one is engineer tourism to support community happiness, which for me is just like an awkward way of saying the visitor economy. Because I mean, what our goals are within the visitor economy, like I think we should have a conversation about that as we talk about the specific sections. But
what if you called it
and I'm not advocating for the way that I positioned it.
Yeah.
Yes, I am. That's not true.
We've got another one, which is yours.
I'm advocating for the way that I positioned it, but I would love to provide context about why I positioned it that way, if that's helpful.
Yeah, and let's just so we can just state it so everybody knows what yours was within your document was strengthen, develop, diversify, evolve, right?
Yep.
And within that means strengthen. And you do a better job. Well, you might just go.
No, you know what? I think there's like a little summary under each one of them.
Yeah. Do you want me to read that?
Yeah,
Actually,
sorry.
I think I have that. Right there.
Again, like I don't want to bore anyone with it, but I put it through a framework where we ask all the questions, like a budget question. Now let's ask a task question. And how do we fit it through that? And I found that that was the only one, because I put them all through it. That
Yeah,
was the
so-
only one that would answer questions.
So here's an idea that might bridge.
Mhm.
What if we called, instead of just saying the visitor economy, what if we said optimizing the visitor economy?
Not helpful
You don't like it?
yet, because it's wordsmithing.
Oh,
And so for me, like, I think we should definitely look at the words, but what I'd like to do first is look at the frame.
I see.
And if the frame holds up, then call it whatever,
Mhm.
because I'm not a wordsmith. But I like the
Because you're telling
framework.
us to do things with it, and this is just saying it's there, so I'm trying to find a word that,
Right,
Can I just jump in here? And
yeah,
I've
totally.
been way too close to this, but I would just caution words like optimizing and stuff for one side of this, where it may be balancing, or, I don't know. But the reason I say this is, whatever we do, hopefully the first part of our structure is we're gonna start baselining, measuring something that we're gonna hopefully go move the needle on. And I think there's an unintended consequence of optimizing the visitor economy. It was said in our TCAP interviews yesterday, and I kind of smiled, but like, we have 3,141 hotel rooms, and we need to be filling all those. Well, if you fill all 3,141 hotel rooms, which would be optimizing the visitor economy, and you did that for 365 days, at double room occupancy before you even touched a short-term rental, you've doubled, tripled the size of the city, tripled the stress on the water treatment, the waste treatment, the hospital. So I think we just, I think we just gotta be very careful in terms of some of the wording. And I think we've gotta think about measuring, doing Pareto type stuff, because that's where we're gonna get our results.
I think that's a really good point, that is not what I meant.
I know you
I
didn't,
didn't mean
just,
maximize. I meant, how do we provide world-class experiences that people are motivated to come and have, and they're willing to pay for them, and they pay enough for them that we can take care of our population? That's what I meant by optimizing.
Yep.
Not maximizing. But I know that it could be read that way. So, okay, sorry for wordsmithing.
No. And wordsmithing
Well, we're on
is
this discussion. This
fabulous.
is good.
Someone
Yeah.
better do it, because it's not gonna be me.
But so
I'm just saying
yeah.
framework, like looking at the framework, if you go through the 4, the reason why I broke their 3 into 4
Yeah, tell us.
is so that it would be manageable and you
Yes,
could have a plan, you could have tasks, and you could be able to measure.
Ben, I don't know if there's if you have this, but like the GC Economic Opportunity Approach slide deck of Melissa's. But if you do, are you able to put this slide up that I'm pointing at the thing?
Maybe the first section of describing the economy stays the same. And then what you're really, when you broke it down, really what you're talking about
Well,
is.
I'm just
the thing-
talking
the
about
action
structure.
steps.
No, it's actually just honestly how we structure it. And the way that I sort of structured it.
this is what you're talking about, right? Is this one?
Yes.
Okay, so it's like your proposal is strength. It looks like Ben's trying to get it pulled up also.
There she is.
Awesome, which is slide 12 on this.
So the
Thank
number
you.
1 word that I was thinking when I was looking at all of this was just actionable. So we've got all their information, all their input, all their feedback. Then we have everything that we know because we live here. We know how it works. So then how would we structure that approach to make it actionable? And so kind of the 4 sections that I broke it down into was strengthen what we have already. Like, what are the ways that we can go through? And I don't remember the summary paragraph.
And does that sort of, I mean, to you, Melissa, does that mean fundamentals? Like, are these two, like, is this just a matter of how we describe it, what word we use for it?
Yes, sort of, yes.
Okay.
So strengthen is focusing on, so if we're using Ben's example of, hey, we want to optimize hotel rooms or whatever. Fundamentals are, we need to make sure that we've got people with housing to be able to staff those jobs, and a solid waste that will handle those, and the water and the infrastructure, right? How do we strengthen our infrastructure and what we have already to be able to support that? And then develop is, how do you take that existing visitor economy, or the economy that we have right now, that we know that between implied, induced, and indirect makes up the lion's share of our economy, like 80% plus of our economy. How do we develop that and help that be stronger and more consistent? And then diversify is what they had described almost as those tourism adjacent businesses. Like, for example, develop would be about that tourism visitor economy, but diversify with tourism adjacent would be about, can we teach EMS classes here? Can we have outdoor training here? Can we have people come and do recovery and wellness? And, you know, if you want to recreate here because you think it's beautiful, you should come get your plastic surgery here too and look at the beautiful view while you do it. And that was kind of that tourism adjacent category. And then evolve was, look, we don't have many eggs in any other baskets. We've got Synergy that's 20 years plus old. And they're kind of the only private industry that people point to and go, oh, but we do have some industry. But our problem is we don't have the staff to staff it. We don't want to go out and recruit and attract these large companies to come in, because who would work for them anyway? We need a separate plan to be able to address how do we foster internally those things.
So what I'm hearing is that strengthen is fundamentals.
Right.
We can choose how we,
Yep.
what the better word
Whatever
for
the
it is.
wordsmithing is, yep.
Develop is the visitor economy.
Right.
Choose how you decide to name it. And then you break this into two categories, and I put it together into one kind of sloppy catch-all category, which I think is fair. So what you're suggesting is, I mean, I personally, and this is a separate conversation, but I'm not crazy about the term diversify. I think
Me
it's too
neither.
tied up in sort of political
All
discourse
these words
here.
are
We don't
triggering.
like,
That's when
But
we
that's-
talk
so
about
yeah, so we'll fix
wordsmithing,
that
that's
stuff.
what I
So-
mean. If we hate it,
but topically, like
Dump it.
if we're talking about things like tourism adjacent, like broadening and adding resiliency to the visitor economy, like that's like, then I think you have a question of like, should you just put that under the visitor economy section
let
or
me
not?
tell you why I
But
like
do-
diversify, and I don't want to use the word, so please don't get stuck on the word.
I like.
The reason why I like diversify for our conversation, right, is because it's not tourism adjacent, meaning it's more of an activity about what do we do to fill those hotel rooms off season? What do we do to take, so we've got two sets of infrastructure here. We've got built infrastructure, hotels, restaurants, everything that can serve
That is
visitors.
private,
Right,
key point.
yes. And then we also have human infrastructure. We've got one hell of an EMS team. We've got an amazing hospital facility. We have got people who know and understand hospitality, and we can leverage all of those folks. Is an EMS world-class training school? Probably not. Like, I don't know that I would call that tourism adjacent. So again, use a different word.
Well, that's why I used supporting local businesses as a bigger category under which we can put a lot of these subcategories like that. But I mean, I hear what you're saying and what you're pointing at too. I think it's something that we should probably
The
just kind
word
of continue having
involved is
discussion
really
with.
good, and we could work in, make sure that we cover the diversify and the involved categories that you have here in your supporting local businesses category. But here's the reason why diversify is a really tricky word. Like, I've been working as a recreation economy consultant in all these communities around the West, and for the last 10 years, people were like, diversify, we should get a bigger industry in here that's gonna create a bunch of jobs and it'll be year round. Everyone wanted that, right? And then the housing shortage happened. So now the nurses are living in the campground and there are no houses. So, and this report does state, we don't have the ability to diversify in the classic definition of it, like try to get away from tourism. So since we don't have workforce and we don't have housing, we're not gonna attract any kind of business that wants to, and we're practically at full employment. So what we need is, so instead, it's like, we need to do the recreation economy better.
And
We need
that's
to be best in the world at doing the recreation economy. So instead of like hoping some light manufacturing thing is gonna show up, they're not coming. And so instead, that's why that word, since that word meant so much to people, and it's not about, we still want to support the non-tourism businesses, the accountants, the dentists, the everyone who, and but it's been a long time of people hoping for light manufacturing and it's just not coming. And so instead, let's face reality and do a really, really better job. Does that make sense at all? Does that?
And I think part of what
dumbing
we should
it
have as a
down.
goal is adding resilience
Right.
to our visitor economy.
Of course,
Right? Which
yes.
can mean things like, what does the off season look like?
Right. And
But it can
evolving,
also
that's
mean
what
things like,
evolving is
what-
adding resilience.
But just what happens when there's the next recession? And like, what types of visitors disappear during recession? Do we have a plan for that in
Yeah.
place? Like, let's have a plan put in place.
Yes, pivot to
for,
regional
like,
advertising. And then
Or do you need to aim for higher income individuals during times of, I don't know the answers to it,
Yeah.
but like, we need to have a resilient, if we have a visitor economy, and we do, let's have a resilient one that can still
Absolutely.
take care of people even during the downturns,
Sure.
the off seasons, whatever it is.
And there
if
are,
our strategy isn't trying to expand the off season and keep having visitors come, then what do we do with the people that need food during that time of year? We need a plan for that. Like,
Right.
what does it look like? We just need a plan to have resiliency in this visitor economy
and
that we have.
there are
It's
best
just
practices
real.
in this category.
The last year, so when Sky and I were doing a lot of work up at USU, just brainstorming this with Maddie and some others, one thing we had on there too was risk mitigation. So
That's a good way of framing it.
our main street is a Utah highway. All we need is one truck carrying the wrong thing to catch on fire downtown. And there's a lot of people in Palisade, Pacific Palisade and stuff right now, reviewing what their disaster plan was. So we were always talking about risk mitigation, like what happens when that Pat Creek fire happens, or whoever's carrying something through on a truck, something happens downtown and closes downtown for 2 weeks. And there's not an answer or a Band-Aid, but it should at least be in the planning that there is a risk factor. We have some dependencies there that are pretty tough.
If I were to dumb it down, and I would be curious to see if you guys agree, disagree, whatever, right? But just plain English. The way that I look at this structure is tighten up the things that make it possible to service what we're even currently servicing in a better way, right? That's your fundamental strength. And we've got a housing issue.
Yeah.
We got to look at the housing issue. Develop what we've got and double down on that visitor economy and doing that more efficiently and more effectively, because we got to have it or we're dead in the water. Find out ways to, the third one is find out ways to utilize that excess capacity through all the creative means that we can throw at it. How do we fill hotel rooms, restaurants, whatever, in completely visitor unrelated ways or new ways or creative ways. And then the last one is, like you were saying, risk mitigation or eggs in a basket or whatever. How do we figure out organically what are those few new opportunities to be the next Synergy that have nothing to do with tourism? And those are kind of the 4 ways, because they all have different activities that would be associated with them. You wouldn't approach any of them the same, and you would measure all of them differently. Does that make sense?
I like everything except looking for the next Synergy.
Well, but that's what I think when people talk about diversification, and that's what they mean, and risk mitigation, is where do we find that next little thing that literally is, if people decided they didn't want to stay in a hotel
I think
anymore.
Ashley's just saying evolve. Don't try to go pie in the sky.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
I think that
Yes.
I mean there's
I'm just saying,
I'm doubling down on the fact that we all use the same company, so that's saying something, and it's 20 years old.
And it's
we're
not
still
it's not
referring to
necessarily
it.
a for-profit company.
Yeah.
So
Oh
it's
my
also a unique
but
widget.
every,
I think also
nobody
Corey's
wants,
also
no
waiting to speak.
portfolio is meant to be, no portfolio is ever comfortable totally invested in one thing. It's never feels that comfortable. But you also just have to be realistic about what's gonna happen around here and how it's gonna work. And it's true. I mean, I've been here for 30 years waiting for the next Synergy. And I've been working on this with communities around the West on this. And it's like, love what you have, embrace it, be the best at what you are. Don't keep hoping someone else is gonna ride in on a white horse and get rid of all your risks. Just saying.
Right, but I think that, and again, this is a really important conversation to have, because that's what a workshop is all about.
Right,
If we say no white horses coming,
right.
right, we're just gonna double down on what we have.
Not to look
and
down.
we leave that out.
Not just, we're
No.
gonna evolve what we have to be best in the world at doing it.
I think we
Yes.
broaden the base of what we have. To me, that's what
Right.
Jason
Hey,
is actually.
apparently I
Let's get-
can't speak when I'm screen sharing, but Corey has a comment. I wanted to make sure he got it in before we got too far from whatever it was based in.
Corey's actually doing the
Well,
work on that.
gosh, that was quite the introduction. Thanks, Ben. I don't mean to interrupt. We can finish the thoughts, and I'd love to chime in when you guys are ready.
Please
We're
go ahead,
ready,
Corey.
We're ready.
Okay, thanks everybody. I'm Corey Shirtliff, Community Development Director for the City of Moab, and then participating kind of from my role from the planning perspective, and especially how this integrates into a general plan tool and element there. But through this, I think all this discussion is obviously extremely pertinent, but this was the first time I kind of heard that chime in of resiliency, which is, I think, an incredibly important component that is now, I think we're maybe wanting to evaluate an additional layer, not to take away from the layers that we're now talking about of, again, not the word maximize, but capitalize on what our assets are. And then this idea of, the new next synergy. But from my perspective within the city and all the businesses that we've coordinated with, what I'm seeing as an extension of that resiliency component is the idea of a sustainable economy to a sustainable community to ignite what is the economic development. And I've talked to a number of people about that engine, especially within housing and economics. And from my experience, that seems to be and I've always talked about it in the sense of an engine with these two pistons, that we're currently in this economic backfire freeze where we can't get new businesses because there's no housing. But because there's no housing, no new businesses, therefore there is no in-commute or migration trend to start building. So we're basically in a negative trajectory slope as far as economics go. We're either increasing or we're decreasing. And we are just needing to turn this engine over of begin increasing. It can be these nominal pieces, but what we've seen through COVID, some of our last challenges, and why the term resiliency really makes sense, is our economy, in the terms that we're talking about, is surrounding around highest and best use. But highest and best use does not make a community. And that is where we are starting to fail, where we're seeing the economics of why we can't hire anybody, why across the board, across different economic spectrums, why can't we seem to grow? And the answer is we can't get over this turn of creating a sustainable community where there are no places to buy your kids' shoes or clothes other than what is kind of adventure gear. There's no dry cleaner. There's no of these kind of common elements, because of course, why would somebody start that business here when they would make more money capitalizing on a higher and best use economic tourism strategy? Of course they would. Why would they not? So I don't blame anybody for selling the family farm to capitalize on tourism. Of course they should. So this becomes the turn of what I think this tool is to guide the strategy of the ship of taking lead on, with, again, my planning background, your land use power to designate and incentivize what is a sustainable community that just turns the engine. I'm not saying that's what's going to really take us off. I think everything that we're discussing is how we're going to capitalize, empower the county and our region. But we need to make that switch, which is this is a sustainable place to live year round, therefore that we can start building the economy. So I hope that makes sense. But the fact that we've talked about resiliency, I wanted to bring in the term of highest and best use and needing to mitigate that throughout, because we can through the land use code and through this, which will lead to guiding policy, which is institutional ordinances, we're going to allow for wedding venues and all these things, which people will do, but they're going to do that and remove daycares. They're going to remove housing options to install some of these things. So we're never going to get that economic turnover where there's the staffing to actually fulfill these. So you guys are hitting on all the right elements. I just wanted to plug that really quick, and really appreciate you letting me participate. Do we know if, I asked Ben, has Amy Weiser been, I know she's kind of said, hey, this board, I want to take it, but has she been involved in some of the editing with this? I just want to catch up with that.
She helped kickstart some of the process, and we have a couple sections tagged to make sure she can do some of the writing in them, like related to land use and things like that specifically. But as we move forward, if you're sticking with us the rest of the meeting today, we'd also love to come back to you, Corey, when we get to some of those, like those sections, and let's just make sure that that Amy's doing those sections with us, because we need the experts in the room on land use policy and things like that to help us. We can say sort of what some of these big picture goals are, but like you're saying, like that's a specific set of policy tools that we have at our disposal. And we also know there's like a separate land use chapter in the general plan, but we want the two to work together and sit next to each other properly, not be at odds with one another or missing out on the expertise that each offers too.
But Corey, it seems like what you were just saying was, to say it a little more straightforward, in terms of the or macro level, you're trying to incentivize private business to fill certain needs that will in turn make us more resilient.
That's correct. And Ashley, earlier you said, hey, private property owners. My plan, that's been the biggest piece that I've seen is through these boards, through these bodies, we really start pushing this. But unless the community through the private sector is on board, it doesn't mean anything. We need that buy-in from the private community. But to your point, is when the private community is selecting what is best for it, because the door is so wide open, you're leaving behind some of those options. So you're not just incentivizing, you might have to be selectively identifying that you can't do highest and best use in these areas, which only leaves it to the next highest and best use, which might be what it is that the community is needing, some of those lower profile things.
Highest and best use, basically that's being defined as most profitable for the private landowner. Business. But I mean, that's how because our system is so respectful of private property, right? We want everyone to be able to do whatever they want with their land. I mean, that's kind of why we have so many hotel rooms, just saying. And why we don't have a store that's selling kids' shoes, or enough daycare space or whatever. And so I think that's super interesting because our whole, the idea that we've been dancing around this whole time is that this is a government thing, but meanwhile, we believe in the free market.
And we need to do both.
And
we believe in government and the free market.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the only way to make the economy work, is to tap into both of those resources.
Exactly.
But I don't think anyone wants, anybody saying you can't do X, Y, and Z unless it's like an emergency, which to me is like, where housing has gotten to in this community, right? We've gotten to a point where it's an emergency. And so then the government has to jump in and do something about it. But you don't want to, we don't want to get overzealous with that.
But it's happening. I mean, Corey's seeing it day by day, people wanting to apply for different things and build buildings that I just went through with him. And so for use, I built an office building, right? And there's not that many office buildings in Moab. So I tried to make it not just another outfitter headquarters, but an office building that could be transitioned to be, have another use. But a lot of times people aren't thinking very long-term and they're going for highest and best use or the thing that will be most profitable for the private landowner. So the trick here is how do we incentivize them to do things that are going to make us more resilient or even more diversified?
So in terms of timing, we should probably move on to start looking at some of the specific areas for policy recommendations. But we haven't heard from everyone in the room. And so I just want to see if Randy, if Melody, if you guys have anything else that you want to sort of jump in with before we get into the weeds of the conversation.
Well, so I'm new in this, but I was part of the Trails tomorrow. I did some of the stuff, when they came out with housing, the thing is, housing is the base of all of this because we need housing for our employees to work, if it's in the tourist industry or if it's in other diversification. So, it's hard because that's such a challenge and that's our biggest burden. And obviously it's not easy fix or it'd be getting fixed all over the nation and in our community. And so, do we let that stump us and say, well, we can't do anything until we fix housing? We can't do that either, but it is the highest priority, and I don't know how it'll fit in all of this because I am new to this part, but that is it. And getting people to use their property for those lower value, it is hard. How do we incentivize? What is the answer to that? And seeing things that was.
One thing too, to bring you up to speed, is when we started this, the consulting team very much said that they would not spend much time on housing and that wouldn't be much of a deep dive because it was just implied and it was happening everywhere. So I think we were a little surprised how much they focused on the housing in the report out because it was kind of implied that this is a problem everywhere and it's so I'm like this isn't a stumper, but it's just the reality of it. And one thing that I was thinking about is we keep talking about this visitor economy. And if we just were to take the hotels and our short-term rentals, I bet if Disney was building Moab, they would know if we build a 3,141 hotel room community with 1,020 short-term rentals, we know the staff that will take for pool cleaning. And I don't think we've defined that. When I look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics for the state of Utah, we are 10x what is shown in other counties for what should be working in our service economy. And I think that we've got to, I think maybe one of our first drills is we've got to, if we're going to talk about this visitor economy, we've got to put some kind of metric around it of what it truly takes to staff what we have here. And that's before guides, vendors and all these things. But I wondered that for this last year. I have some contacts that run a very big part of the short-term rental piece, and I know what they pay their employees. I know why they don't have turnover, and I know what they do. I've seen into that window. A lot of the restaurants I grew up in the restaurant business. Melody sells to restaurants. It's a huge indicator. And you see a lot from that. St. Francis, when we do the food handout, in this off season, I can tell you it'll probably be higher this year, but it goes up 42% in demand. I mean, that's huge. That goes to your teachers living in nurses living in cars and stuff. So I think we could start measuring some of that stuff just to as a defined piece to this maybe.
Well, connecting those two dots, like if you said, okay, we can't let you build another hotel because there is not the staff. Like that's kind of what you're saying is we're gonna save you money. I mean, the people that we prevented through the moratorium from building hotels, we did save them money. I mean, because so it's like, how do you get the realities of the economy, give those realities to the private investor and say, are you sure you want to do this? Like,
well, I know some investors that have built those hotels that will give that data out because they're trying to sell very quick. And I think that moratorium, without trying to go to root cause, but I think that was part of the problem. The county said, this is the date you will no longer get permits, and everyone, all the big guys just went and got their permits and said, build your hotel.
Yeah.
I don't know that this was built on a demand curve.
No, it was artificial in 7 different ways to Sunday, but either way, I mean, that's the issue, incentivizing private investment to make a resilient economy. That's really what we're trying to talk about. And it's not easy, but giving the more information investors and private landowners know about whether or not their business is going to succeed, that seems like a good thing to be giving them these metrics and saying, and that's something that I'm thinking about the chamber doing is starting to produce a dashboard every month that has some metrics that we can all look at and go, So anyway, but yeah, it's interesting. That's a big part of the problem. But all right, sorry, you gotta get us back on track.
No problem. Let's do it.
Okay, but I don't want to leave until we talk about this structure, because the structure for me is super, super important still.
Well, I think it's important, Lisa, but I don't think that the goal of this session is to reach consensus on necessarily everything. I mean, I think the conversation that we've had, gives me 5 new ideas on how to modify the document so that it does what you're asking for it to do and what I want it to do.
No,
and,
I'm asking the question because more out of curiosity than anything else is if we're saying that this framework is for decision-making and for actionability, right? Then it's going to determine what actions we do or we don't take. And out of curiosity, what I'm wondering is, are we interested in exploring whatever we would call that evolved category? Because that would mean, hey, we're going to dedicate some resources, or we might fund a grant, or we might whatever. If we say, no, that's not a priority for us, then we wouldn't resource that, or we wouldn't look at it, and we wouldn't consider it a priority. Does that make sense?
Totally. And
do we have a sense for what that is?
I think the evolve word is really good. I love it as much as I don't like the diversify word. I love the evolve word because this is the part about rural economic development that is so important. So many communities. I mean, I was at this rural economic development conference and like raise your hands like, do you have examples? Because I was giving examples of all these cool things happening in places. She said, do you have examples of places that are just staying the same? And I'm like, sister, that is not really going to be. We're always in a world of change, and the communities that are surviving and doing the best are acknowledging that change and evolving. So I think that, so you're kind of advocating for a fourth category that is forward facing and forward looking and getting ahead of trends and like
Maybe
trying to anticipate problems. Is that?
Maybe what I'm saying is that the decision whether or not to have that category should be an intentional decision about whether or not that's important to us and we want to resource it, meaning time, effort, energy, or if we say, hey, we don't believe that's important or that's going to happen, in which case we are not going to put effort or an intern or a grant into, can we develop new businesses that are non-visitor related?
Sure.
So that's, I'm just saying, we need to decide, not in this meeting.
Future needs, evolve to meet future trends, evolve to meet future customer demands. Like, so instead of, I'm on the team now of a fourth category. So instead of just supporting businesses, which you've got, maybe there is this fourth category that is try to get ahead of it, which sort of encompasses like planning for downturns too. I mean, there are lots of things that you can do. If you've got worldwide economic pain, focus your advertising on regional marketing so that you can get people who can drive here. But the minute it switches back, because those people don't spend as much money, the minute it switches back, start advertising for further away. So I think evolve is sort of like prepare and do invest in future plans and do invest in looking ahead. I think that could be a really cool category.
But specifically, I'm asking about non-tourism related. That's important. Does it make sense? Like, it's because it's a decision-making filter.
Sure.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
But also when we get to like your example of what that looks like is like nourishing entrepreneurship and innovation. So this is where I think we're all on board with that. Everyone in this room is going to be on board with, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, supporting entrepreneurs locally and doing a better job of it. We've all recognized the need to do a better job of that here in the local area and small businesses. And what their ideas are will be because of the market, because of who they are as individuals, because of how well we do in education, like things like that. And that will drive the directions of the economy. But as a policy tool, if that's the first step, I think we're definitely all on board.
Yeah.
It's just like, so some things might be different than that. Like if you were talking about creating a grant program that only incentivizes or only supports businesses that aren't tourism related, like that would be something where you have to make a decision very specifically on what your goal is. But I don't know, I think there are some places where that's necessary, but I personally, I would make that I would not make that 1 out of 4 main categories.
Maybe it's
because
under
I think it's
the
smaller
supporting,
than that.
yeah.
I think it should be less funded than that. I think sure, it should be supported. We should be supporting and certainly our entrepreneurs and maybe new business ideas and industry ideas. But let's not let that be on equal footing with supporting the visitor economy and making it work better for everyone in Moab. Because that's what we have, and it's huge. It's like 800-pound gorilla in the room. It's what's going to make sure that people don't go hungry in our community, right? And so pie in the sky of what's new and next, let's put some energy there, but not nearly as much as what we put to making sure that our people
Totally agree.
have something.
And the reason why, and again, I keep pushing such what seems like a minute detail is that we don't need a fourth category if we're willing to say we don't ever want a non-tourism related business.
No.
Again, because that's the only category that's related to non-tourism things. Does that make sense?
I don't
know
ever want one again. I just wanted as a subcategory, recognizing that it's not.
I think that all these things affect. So what's happening in other places like Richfield and Natarita, Colorado, and these places that are investing in recreation assets just for the first time, sort of, right? That they were dependent on resource extraction and now they're just getting involved in recreation. They have a two-pronged approach. They want to build the visitor economy. They also want to attract business investment and remote workers and a small division of a company or a little company that wants to live in Natarita because there's some houses for sale and there's storefronts on Main Street. And so in other places that have more, that are less mature in the recreation economy than us, there is this quality of life macroeconomic trend that is happening out there. Are we completely are we gonna turn all those people away? Definitely not. And the housing thing, that's a market ebb and flow. I mean, it's not gonna last forever. There's gonna be, I think, I don't know, but, so I don't think we're saying anywhere, don't, discourage non-tourism businesses. I don't think we're saying that anywhere. I just think we're saying, don't make it be the be all to end all perfect answer to all our problems. We're just making so much work for Chris.
For everyone. I mean, you guys are all gonna get involved in this work. Sorry, that's the last part of our discussion.
Well, the housing
It's a
issue
good
is a bit of an island issue too. I mean, we have so much public land here. It's not like most communities where you would just go start developing communities for housing. So I think
We have land though that can be in the housing. We just have to incentivize those owners.
Right, there's a lot
To
more
put housing or whatever on there because they can make so much money selling it to a hotel or to second, third homeowners, and so that's just, there is land and there's also changing our land use code to where we can have higher density and stuff. So I mean, that's not an issue. It's just diving into that problem. But that's not gonna.
And that's 10,000 times easier than this public land idea. That is really.
You know what I'm saying though? I'm just saying the reality is we're like an island. We don't, like what we have developed is confined. So.
I mean, we don't have as much private land as other counties and other places do.
Right.
I mean, we don't have enough, but that's also, we don't want that, or else you're just Richfield with a whole bunch of pastures and not
What I'm saying is that is just the reality of our.
I'm totally with you on that.
Is we are constrained, and we should at least understand our constraint.
Yeah, but there's people like Squatters. So for example, Squatters was gonna come down here and put in a brewery, and they came down and they did an employee, in housing, and they said, nope, there is no way we could have a business here, and off they went. Would it be that great to know how Squatters does that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what we need to look at. Like, how did Squatters just come down here, do a study, and then be like, nope, we're not putting in
And
Squatters.
none of the hotels, Hyatt didn't do that.
Yeah, no, none
They
of them
don't
do.
do
Tons of
that.
businesses don't do that.
Yeah.
They don't do that. They just come here and then all of a sudden, oh wait, there's no employees.
Yeah.
So, and there's no employees because there's no houses for them to
Yeah.
live in.
That's one of those things where it's like these studies like Trail to Tomorrow, when they do all the surveys, like you're always asking questions of who is here. And one of the most important things you can do is spend a couple of days just looking for the people who aren't here, but might have been otherwise, right? And ask a question. So a business that decided not to invest, that is a gold mine of information.
I know,
folks like
it
us.
is,
And
yeah.
we really need to find ways to tap into it. It's hard to find them and talk to them, but even just anecdotally, knowing that
bet
story
you're
about Squatter.
That's why Starbucks hired all the McDonald's land people.
Can I jump in for just a second?
Yeah.
All of my notes pretty much touched on so many things that were just said, and I don't want to lose that. So a few of the things that I was thinking about when I was when we're talking about Melissa's Evolve section and non-tourism related businesses, that also to me, that all ties together. It goes back to the fundamentals. So if we have housing shortage and housing is a part of that, but it's also what supports housing? Do we have plumbers? Do we have electricians? Do we have HVAC people? Do we have enough of them to support all of this housing? And that ties also into the education. Are we, do we want to support vocational related training for the needs not only of industries, but also of the people who live here? Because those people, if we're outsourcing everything we need all the time, if I need to replace something, I need a roof, I need to replace something on my pump, do I find that locally or am I going to have to go get it somewhere else? So when we talk about non-tourism related businesses, it's also about supporting those businesses that could be supplying those things, some of those other needs. So I think those are important things we don't want to overlook, including landscaping. You have the needs of landscaping. When I managed property in Moab, it was very difficult to find landscapers, and everybody's either already working, has too many clients, they're working for the hotels. So if I couldn't, as an apartment manager, find a landscaper, who knows what private property owners are doing? And then what if those are people who live in these areas that we're building out into our wildland urban interfaces? And then that, then we're looking at wildfire hazard and people don't even have the resources they need to get help with their fuels. So there's a whole lot of different businesses that could help support our economy. There's a lot of opportunity there for all kinds of businesses. The other thing, I mean, we've touched a lot on overnight rentals, but do we have like numbers on second homeowners? That's another part of this picture in my mind. I know out here in Castle Valley, it's probably a third, which seems really high to me. And I think as a county, like maybe part of our goals are to get that number down. And to see more of our housing in full-time residency. I don't know how exactly we do that, but I think it's an important part of this, because when you have limited amount of land and you have these needs, you don't want to see it all going to the highest bidder all the time. And I think that kind of sums up a lot of the notes that I took. I feel like it all ties together with the fundamentals, however we want to call it, whether it be strengthen or fundamentals. Yeah.
Those are very helpful.
Those are really good. That support economy piece, I gotta figure out what the economist word, I don't know if they call it support economy, but it's a huge chunk. The electricians, the plumbers, the landscapers, all those people are really important, and they are part of just like once people live here, all those needs need to be met. And so that part of the economy does kind of help when you have a drop in visitation, because those still people need a plumber. And so that's another thing that we should incentivize. Some city somewhere just levied 100% tax on something. Do you guys know what that was? It was like coming into the city and they're trying to reduce
congestion tax in New York City.
Congestion travel pricing.
Yeah, there was. I'll find it, but this,
lots of European cities are doing it now, like Venice. And you want to come in, you want to make a reservation, you're going to pay.
Yeah, and the same with the Airbnb thing and the second homeowners. It feels like, I mean, I'm sure the legislature would start twitching if we tried to come up with something that we really penalize them in a serious way enough to disincentivize second homeownership but it is something that we should be pursuing. And that's kind of what this plan is meant to be doing. Like, what is it worth it for our elected officials to be working on? What are the buttons that we
like a vacant home tax, like a vacant home tax, or, I know something to think about is just how do we buy out some of those nightly rentals? It would be super great to buy out some nightly rentals that are in neighborhoods. Like, what will it cost to pay you for this to go back to just being a house that you're going to sell and be a house? Because they're grandfathered in. A lot of those are grandfathered. I mean, there can't be new ones, but the ones that are already out there are continuing to be sold, and they're being sold at ridiculous amounts of money that a house wouldn't go for because they're a business. Right. And so, if you could find somebody that would be willing to go into some kind of a program of we're going to buy your nightly rental back, but I hear you. No, I think these are really important questions to ask, because it is kind of the crux of the problem, that it's going to be hard to solve it if it goes back to what Corey was saying. If everyone gets to do whatever they want and goes for the highest profit, then you end up with these imbalances. And now we're stuck with trying to figure out how to get through them. I think some ideas with her strengthening fundamentals, using that strengthening fundamentals. And it's not just fundamentals, it's the strengthening those, which would be like our plumbers and stuff, and then evolving our local businesses and entrepreneurs. So we'd be evolving those local businesses to be who knows what, that pie in the sky.
Yeah, and that's something been talked about a lot, like supporting entrepreneurship more and supporting technical trades more.
Yeah, the vocational training is definitely something we need to make sure is highlighted in here.
Yeah.
Because it feeds into the workforce issue, hugely, like Jasmine just
chats in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, check the chats.
Checking
You're the
chats.
controller of the chats down there. Chats.
What?
Done.
And maybe we just hit the chat button so we can all see all the questions. Yeah, awesome. So, Melissa, are you ready?
Can someone else say that? No, I can't even see it.
Down
Close that little
There you
blue
go.
dot. This has got it.
Okay, thanks.
And then maybe you can read them
Down
because
at
you're
the
closest
bottom.
to them.
Corey.
Do you want me to read out the comments? Would that be easier?
Yeah, it was really just echoing Jasmine's points. Really, I think there's a number of variables that boil down, but starting back with that first comment is that it really is a dependent network of variables, and trying to advance any one of those variables, it strains without trying to bring the rest of it along, which is something we've all been saying. I think you're all just trying to nail down on how it is that we accomplish that. But this plan would be in essence, being the guiding document to allow those policymakers, whether it's staff or the commission, to legally advance some of these plans into ordinance to limit types of uses, advance types of uses or incentive programs, funding. So the Moab Area Affordable Housing Plan does identify some of those second home numbers. It's incredibly high across the county, and it's also likely not the reality. It's probably even higher than that. And then the Housing Task Force is looking at a buyback program right now, similar to the Veil and Deed program, of how much is it going to cost us to buy back this right from you. And it's not the end of the world, but it is expensive when it starts adding up. But that's all going to have to be money pulled from the community to pull that back. And that community is our business owners. It is our commercial properties. But yeah, anyway, those are the comments. Thank you.
Thanks. It was something that we did look at a while ago here was even just helping develop the framework for voluntary rollbacks of overnight rentals as a right on properties, right? So if you're talking about like the buybacks, but there's also, Vail also did this, right? And was to have in place a framework so that people could voluntarily, when they sell their homes, go through that process.
We have that right now with the city. I just want to say, because again, a lot of these things again, like somebody, I think it was Ashley mentioned, we've been working with a lot of people in the community over the last couple of years as far as this goes. And we have that right now. We have a deed restriction somebody can pull up. There's been 2 people in the entire city that have voluntarily restricted property because, again, at the end of the day, a farmer, whoever it is, they have to look out for themselves and their families. And why on earth would they turn away money that would support their families? And like, even to the interest of the community, if you have enough economic stability that you can say, yep, I'm going to write off $300,000. I commend you for that, and that's great. But the reality is a lot of our folks don't have that competitive option. So I think the idea of voluntary or voluntary incentive, it's not a reality. I think you'll have to create frameworks that manufacture that requirement of this is what we need, and this is the only thing that you can do at a certain point. So I know that's going against a lot of, again, the free market component, but the last 30 years of free market is why you guys are having this conversation right now, is the highest and best use has manipulated because of that ability that we have, the national market that we have here. It doesn't make the economic laws work. I've talked to a lot of economists from the U that they're kind of baffled, like, what do you mean people aren't doing this or aren't doing it? I'm like, the rules don't apply here. It's totally on its head with supply and demand. It does, your straightforward economics don't work. We have to be more creative and probably a little bit more assertive to start turning the battleship that we're down the path on already.
Agreed.
So I would suggest that we start just like running through some of the sections. We've been doing it ad hoc as we're having this conversation. We got tons of awesome notes of specific ideas that will end up in sections, but unless anybody has a burning additional comment before we do that, I kind of say we just jump in and start moving through some of the sections. Okay, so tourism economy. Within that, I put a few subheadings that I think, I'm trying to pull up the right document so that I can do this all with you, sorry. It seems to me there's sort of two components of this. One is like a framing of what we want to do with the visitor economy. And then 2 is what are some of the specific steps or like policy recommendations that are being made that would go into each of those, under each of those subheadings or things like that. So I think where we were at, and I'm looking at the wrong document, you guys have the full one in front of you. I'm looking at an older version, but I think it's still the similar, is strengthen, add resiliency, protect, and then specific strategies, basically.
Under each of those.
Sorry?
Under each of those strengthens.
I'm just saying what the what the subheadings are right now
Yeah, got
in
it.
the document are of the visitor economy section is strengthen, add resiliency, protect, and then somewhere underneath each of those would be specific strategies. So I mean, I think I don't know if I can explain what I was trying to say with them, but I'm also happy to just open it up and just say, what do you guys think? I mean, what should the subheadings be? Like, what do we, I mean, you know, like the Trail to Tomorrow, they say engineer it so that tourists make us happy or something like that, right? I thought that was a little silly, but, you know, but what do we want from the visitor economy? How do we want to frame what our goals are under the visitor economy? I mean, to me, adding resiliency to that is like the one that I would really like say. I really think we ought to have a subheading that says that we want to have resiliency within that visitor economy, because we know that it goes through huge ups and downs, both like throughout each year and throughout business cycles and just like all sorts of reasons. And it's not that we necessarily have to like smooth everything out and make it flat, but we have to make sure that the people that live here and work in that economy are okay, whether it's time of recession or not, whether it's, you know, winter or summer, things like that. But yeah, what are the key things we need?
So to really talk about this, you got to back up one step, and that is, what is the visitor economy, right? And so the visitor economy is a really interesting animal. Talk about not market forces and imbalances. I mean, historically, the visitor economy is a bunch of public lands with some trails or something built on them that are managed by a land manager over here. And then there's a tourism department of the state that's the marketing department that's over here, right? So the history of the visitor economy was people built trails, or they built recreation assets, or there was a lake, or whatever the rec asset was, and it was managed by some land manager. And then there was the marketing department over here that was promoting the state and kind of telling people to go to this place. But the two groups, can you imagine running a business where the marketing department doesn't talk to the product development department? Like, that's what we're starting with. When they rolled out the Mighty Five campaign, I'm not sure they had even given NPS a heads up. Like, there's an assumption that the recreation assets are just good to go and that we don't have to do anything to the product. And all we have to do is marketing. And you can see that assumption playing out in the whole TRT conversation with the county. Like, our only problem is we didn't spend the marketing money right. Nobody's really asking the question, how do our products compare to our competitors? Do we have the best experiences for all these different activities? If you want to go.
So how do we put something like that into a policy document?
Yeah, it would be, I mean, connect look at all sides of the visitor economy, not just the marketing spend, but the actual product development spend.
But like, what's the role of government in product development?
The government owns the land. It's a huge role.
But the county government,
they're cooperating agencies.
So that's your main point here is because I think we have that in here, and I want to just make sure. So like, is making sure that our local economic development folks and I don't know, just that our local government is working with the land managers.
Yes, but
I think there's something bigger than that you're pointing at, but I don't know what the policy part is.
Well, the policy part is manage visitors and manage experiences. It has to do with, if you're doing a good job of managing visitors and managing the experiences that are your product, then you actually have to do less marketing because the product speaks for itself. Everyone knows that, right? So like I'm not sure what the words are, and we can go deeper on this, but this is what every single community that I've worked in the last 12 years is doing wrong. And we have the opportunity to do it right. So if you want to grow and you want to be resilient and you want to be relevant forever, you have to keep making sure that you're offering good experiences. Now, the 2008 resource management plan called for 150 miles of purpose-built single track for mountain biking. And that is why we have all the trail systems we have now, and why we don't have a mountain biking kerfuffle. Like, we are still, and we're building one more. So like, we're winning in that category. OHV, we are not winning. We are in the twilight zone. We have not worked on the product at all. There's some things in the works. I'm meeting with the Motorized Committee tomorrow I'm really excited about, but that the chamber's working on. But the whole visitor economy has been run without looking at product development. And the reason Trail Mix was such a brilliant idea to have the trails be talked about at the county level is because it is a cooperating manager agency with all the land managers. The Park Service had to show up to the Trail Mix meeting. The BLM had to show up. So did the Forest Service. So Moab has this amazing leg up that we have this relationship with our agencies that is actually on the micro level, like really working on trail signage and making sure that all the visitor experience. So we're, on the one hand, we have a great model for managing visitors on the mountain bike side and getting it on the hiking side. We need to implement it on the OHV side. We have the opportunity to do that, but part of making a resilient economy, you wouldn't say, make your business better, but don't ever change the product. Just change the marketing. So it's part of what has to be pointed out is that if you're gonna have a really strong visitor economy, you better check in on the product at regular intervals.
Which is really like making sure you have strong connections between your businesses and the folks in government that make decisions relevant to
I want
them.
to tap into that because I want to make sure that I'm hearing this, because to me, what I would want to hear is a definitional role.
Sure.
So because we want to create something that's actionable and that we can use as a decision-making framework, we don't, and I'm going to go somewhere before I get to my question.
Sure.
We don't own the public land.
Yes,
we are
do.
not responsible. No, we don't.
We don't control, the law controls it, but
If
we own it.
don't control it and we don't own it, like for example, perfect example for me is again, like what we've talked about. If a town opens up 10 miles down the road, cooler bars, better hotels, better vibe, better whatever, are people going to keep going to Moab? Probably not, because they're here to go do all of those things that don't belong to us, but what does belong to us are our bars, our hotels, our outfitters, our whatever. And here's why this distinction matters for me.
Mm-hmm.
So if we use this as a decision-making document, we've got this huge spend that was so controversial over recreate responsibly. So if we look at that decision and we say, is it our role to preserve those lands, get people to recreate responsibly, maintain those lands, then that's how we should be spending those dollars. If it's not, and we don't have control over it, then we're doubling down on our relationships with public land managers and saying, these are the trail structures that we want you guys to put more into whatever. We're noticing that people are walking on the crust, and that's gonna bum us out for everybody. Like, what's our role?
That's B. B is our role. And in the communities that are kicking ass, Durango, Colorado, and some others, Bend, Oregon, they're doing that. The public, it's a tricky deal because you put the business lens on everything you just said, right? So now the product, we're selling experiences. And some of those experiences, there's an outfitter involved. So that's a more direct relationship with the product. But other ones, there's tons of people who come here, they don't spend, the money they spend is with hotels and restaurants. But the product, the reason they go to those hotels and restaurants is they want to have this outdoor experience that we're offering. And so in the communities that are really winning at this game, they're making sure their outdoor experiences are world class, are great, are meeting expectations, are not trashed, are people come away going, that was a really cool trail or whatever. Everyone's
So it's not just the local businesses that need to be at the table, it's the representatives of user groups.
It's the user groups, the user groups and the land managers. And we've achieved that. That is what Trail Mix does.
Totally.
Trail Mix brings the user groups and
But
the
let's
land managers.
call it out where we've done it well, and
Exactly.
then ask
And do
where
it
we can do
more.
it better.
Right. If we can pull off what we've done in Trail Mix and what we've done to keep our place in the bike world, if we can do that on the OHV world, we're going to be winning. And there's some movement going on in that direction. But it's just like,
I think this is another section in a visitor economy section. It's like, it
Yeah.
is product management or something
Right.
like product
and this was
development,
something that like I talked to Patty, what was our Trails to Tomorrow consultant? Patty. No, what's her name? Kathy, sorry. Kathy Ritter.
I just was
Yeah,
talking
you're
to her
like,
last
you're like,
week.
who is that? Kathy Ritter, like, I was really like, sister, she came from a tourism background. And so she did all the stuff that you do as a tourism person, but she didn't get enough into the product, the land management background. And the trend in land management too is to manage experiences, not just polygons, right?
Yeah.
Like it used to be, here's the park, here are the rules in the national park, go have a good time, you know, and here's the BLM. And now it's like, we're offering you a bike ride that crosses the jurisdiction. We have the opportunity to offer this incredible e-bike ride that starts at Utah Raptors State Park, goes into the national park. Like, we have so much to work with on the product side, but if we just ignore it and only fight about how much marketing money we're gonna spend, I mean, it's hard to win.
So
Hey, can I jump in? I'm looking at the the time, and I want to make sure that we have 10 minutes max. Just to touch base on the Rural County grant real quick, maybe only 5 minutes. But I'm also wondering, with how this conversation is going, if we're getting into the territory of maybe assigning some writing tasks and some writing roles. I don't know, Chris, I don't know if we've gotten as far through the structure of the plan as it's drafted right now, but I also think that judging by the conversations that are having, I think there's consensus around much of the structure, and some of it might come together when there's writing. But I'm hearing a lot of talking going on that sounds like it could be writing the plan itself. And so I'm wondering if you want to like jump ahead or lead any of that like delegating of writing responsibilities.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Yeah, I mean, I think there's an important question for us to just have, or a short conversation, which is how to move forward with this process. And I think one way to do some of that is to ask, and if anyone in this room wants to volunteer to write a paragraph about any particular topic that you have strong opinions on. So like if we wanted to add a product development section, it would be awesome if Ashley, you would just contribute a paragraph that can get that section started, and then we'll workshop that, you know, or whatever, via email and things like that. But that would be like one really useful contribution, I think. And so I don't know if anyone else in the room or on Zoom wants to sign up. I mean, I don't think you have to, you know, I don't think everyone has to sign up for something. I'm not trying to say that, but if there's some place where you feel like I have some expertise here, please do volunteer. And if you see a section, a subheading, a heading, whatever, and you say, you know who we need to talk to about that one, like tell us that too, so that we can then go and say, hey, Amy, please help us write this land use section. Hey, Caitlin, please help us with this housing section, or what the housing task force is up to, you know. That will be, I think those are some tools to help us move this forward. And
we are trying to spell out all the tactics exactly, but we are trying to, it's almost like we're building a picture. I mean, we're describing where we are and what we're doing, and in the places where we know what we could do better, we're suggesting it. But even if we don't know what to do, we still need to lay out the problem. And so it's not like you have to have the answer on housing, but even if you can describe it well.
I agree with that. And if we have within the document, not answers for every question, for every problem, but if we have answers for some of them that are like policy prescriptions, then when we give it to the commission, I mean, that becomes very actionable.
Yeah.
And they might look at those and say, we see 12 different proposals here, and we only like 3 of them. You know, that's fine. They can cross out the other ones, but then they have 3 action items. So I mean, that's huge, I think. So I don't think we have to get there everywhere, but when we have really good ideas that are worthwhile, I think it is worth putting.
Well, also keeping in mind, it's a public document too. So this will all, the general plan goes out to the public before it's adopted as well. So there will probably be other input that can help with some of those action items.
Interesting.
Yep, this is going to be a community workshop. We're going to bring them as finished a product as possible, but it doesn't get passed without that aspect. So we're definitely going to get more ideas as we keep going, but providing ideas and providing actionable ideas specifically is a great way to bring it.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a paragraph by Ashley on product development. And Ben was just offering
I was
to,
gonna say, I or myself and someone in my department would take a sub-stab at not the visitor economy, but the service part of the visitor economy, the service
Support part.
infrastructure. Basically the lodging and food service sales piece of it. Because I think what we need to do is, if nothing else, size it and show what that contributes. That's a Pareto right there. That's
What's a Pareto? I'm not getting.
Pareto, it's the 20-80 rule. So 20% of the project, whatever, gives 80% of the result. So
you're saying 80% of our revenue comes from hotels?
well, our TRT is.
Yeah, but that's not the whole revenue.
That's why I said I'm gonna write a subtext of just the service and the service model.
Okay,
Just so we can size it. I just think we need to define it.
sure.
If we don't define it, we're just talking about a monster that we
But,
don't.
and where you're going is, like, the more you define it, that's information that we should give to potential investors so that they see where things are. I feel like
Or the local economy.
even if we can't like control private property at all, we could at least be tracking things in a way that would incentivize investors, or at least inform investors. I think that's a really fun idea, because it's like what Corey was saying, and how hard it is to prevent some landowner from doing highest and best use. Well, they might think it's highest and best use for that little time period, but it turns out we've got data that should give them pause, that they should have. So there is a whole data thing that I really think, and the Chamber's got a project on this, so we'll see if we can't start pulling together some stuff, Ben, for you that would be helpful. And it would be just once a month sourcing like federal, state, and different data and pulling it together in this dashboard that could then show trends and help. There's a lot of good ideas we had. We might not have stuck to the schedule though.
that's all right, yeah. I mean, I think as long as everybody's offering what they came here to offer, then half the comments, and we'll just keep working on it. Does anybody else want to jump in with a recommendation of someone we talked to, or a section they're most interested in?
Well, I just wanted to say that as folks are writing, we have a lot of data resources at our fingertips, and so if folks ever want to tag me in sections and say we could use help just fleshing out whatever we're writing from a quantitative perspective, please don't hesitate to just tag me in your documents, and I'm sure we'll all be talking to each other about what we're working on anyways, but just wanted to give that
You're tagging on something I just volunteered for, so.
You've already been voluntold.
Yeah.
That ship sailed.
Sweet,
Lisa,
that's
do
my
you
favorite.
want together on supporting local business and entrepreneurs?
You would love to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That'd be great.
Okay.
That's great.
Thank you. Cool. Well,
I think the biggest thing is keep thinking about how what we're trying to do is educate the public and our elected officials, like get them, help fill in the blanks for them, because I feel like the public and everyone sees the world from what they know. And so they're trying to solve the problem based on this group of facts that they have, right? And what we're trying to do is help build this broad consensus of, okay, this is actually what the whole elephant looks like, and helping people see that. So if we keep that in mind, that's sort of a general plan is, hey, everyone, this is where we are and this is where we're going. That's kind of what a general plan is. So we don't have to have.
It is that, but it's also, and how are we going to get there?
Exactly. And
So
tactics.
it's all three of those things.
Yes.
And we need to make sure that we get far enough into the weeds where we do the third thing
Right.
while we want to,
Agreed.
all of those are.
Yeah, this is where we are, this is where we're going, this is how we think we should get there. And if there's disagreement about that, fine, you're right, like some pieces might fall off, but if we can even get agreement on a core group, that's progress, because right now we're just like, it's her fault, it's his fault, it's
Well,
her
different
fault.
options of how to get there isn't bad.
Yeah,
Either,
that's right.
you don't have to agree on the same exact plan.
Yep.
You get the
But
same
tactics,
solution.
yeah, you're
You
right.
have to have the same problem,
Right.
to get an end goal, but the in-between part could be
Agreed.
different and it could be in there.
And then if you do disagree about that, you don't hate the other person because you're trying to get to the same place.
Yeah, the
right?
same as, you know, yeah, there's way more ways to get the same place, you know,
That is a lot of what happens. People fight about tactics even when they're really just trying to go
the same place.
I love that you said that because I actually think that that's the most important thing. And I put in the document and it was emphasized in Trail to Tomorrow that one of the biggest impediments is perception. And I feel like if we could have a rhythm and a cadence of communication with people so that you can say things like 80% or more of our economy is driven by visitors and not have people go, I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
But it's a fact.
Right.
So how do we have like a regular rhythm and communication with the community so that we all kind of see the same set of facts? That's huge.
Well, we have a project at the chamber now to create a monthly dashboard of factors and start to track some things. And we're just going to be pulling from, we're not going to do any of the research. We're going to just pull from existing members and start a project like that. Let's see if we can, how far we can get with that and if that would be useful, you know? Because yeah, if we don't agree on where we are, it's going to be real hard to agree on where we're going.
Well, I say with that, we
get
sort of close
close.
this section, and I know Ben had a quick update on the road committee grant stuff.
Sorry, there are two Bens. Me, Ben?
I thought you were the one. I don't know. Who's Ben?
Yeah. Yes, I think Ben, myself, and Melissa can talk about it. Ben F, do you want to introduce it, or do you want me to?
Yeah, just, so we have applied for our rural county grant, and our first holdup was that we were informed that after years of going along our board for this advisory board, the compliance wasn't correct. So Ben Alter moved quickly. We got that in compliance at the last commission meeting, or not the last one, but the one right before the end of the year, which immediately brought us into compliance. In the meantime, I can tell you because Ben and I wrote the note to James Dixon, but on December 10th, when we found out that Cassie had resigned as ED of the chamber, we started looking at the chamber part of the grant and saying, is it realistic for what was designed for those two hires and those deliverables to be achieved in this now shorter period of time until they get a new ED and you guys got organized. So we met last week with Deborah, James Dixon, and Colette Cox, Lisa, Ben, and I did. And we learned in that meeting some information we did not know before. Number one was that we had some options with that second piece, that we could encumber the funds and hold them until the chamber's ready and we could extend the timeline, or we could change the deliverables underneath, or we could pull back. We had different options. So moving quickly, what we'd like to do is, and I don't think this takes a decision, I think we just do it, is we want to take delivery of our grant. The check has been written so that we can give the piece that was assigned to Moab Child Care their piece to apply it where they had it. And after thinking this for a week, like we had discussed, we would encumber the rest until we could come back and know the chamber was able to deliver on what is measurable, or we could change what was underneath. But that way we wouldn't tie this up. So that's what we wanted to discuss.
We are.
What are you not saying? Your body
You
is
know,
speaking.
I'm just soaking it in. Yeah, James Dixon is I'm not
Right.
the.
So what we want to do is we just wanted to discuss or tell that here, inform, and then our next call was to James Dixon and just say that's what we'd like to do.
And
Because the clock's been running.
Got it.
We have now till July for reporting.
So I am happy to meet whatever requirements you need the chamber to meet. And I just became the chamber president like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, this wasn't even last week. She was not the
Yeah.
president.
And so I am, I see what's happened, and I'm ready to get to the next place. And we have a lot of, we're redoing our budget and looking at everything, and we're ready to produce whatever documents you need. And we are happy to review the deliverables. I mean, I think what we're going to have to figure out is, like, the trainings have all been done, and the remaining trainings are scheduled, and they're productive and good, and we're happy with those. We've been pulling off all these events, but we are, as far as the real question is, are we going to do a business summit or not? And if we don't, do you want to do it? And how are we going to do that? Because that was the big expensive item. And I think there's a lot of ideas for this that we can talk about, like doing one that doesn't involve a whole bunch of consultants and a whole bunch of paid speakers, and it's more like a real convening of our community and structured conversations about all this stuff. I think that can be really powerful and cheaper, and we wouldn't have to charge everyone $100 or whatever we were trying.
But, yeah, I think so. That's the track. Is why we would encumber the chamber piece and
until we make a
give
plan that you guys
so that
like.
we're not holding up the childcare piece.
Absolutely, and I totally understand, and I
That's
think
what
it's a great way to do.
talk to James about.
Yeah, I think, that's obviously not my decision to make if that's gonna be accepted or not. I can only just advise you to be very clear in your proposal to him of how that's gonna work and what that looks like, and timelines and deliverables if they're the same. I mean, as much information as possible.
Absolutely. That's what we've done. We've
But
done
that
at every
is-
point that the minute we had information, we delivered it, so.
Right, so yeah, that's a conversation definitely to be had with James.
So we'll
So
have-
as,
we'll
I
have that
highly
tomorrow.
recommend as soon as possible.
No,
Because if there are changes within, it does have to go to the commission and, things like that, so.
Well, I don't think
That's one.
Oh no, you cut out.
It's not a change. I think the only change is the timeline on the funds being spent, but otherwise, I think our goal is to see the chamber empowered by these funds, and also face the reality that for them to make the most effective use of funds, we want to see an executive director back in place. They probably do as well. But if we were to reopen this to the board, there are a lot of great opportunities and a lot of things we could do if we wanted to, by majority vote, reopen the application and then send it to the commission and do all this stuff. And that's like another 2 months. And the next rural county grant application is going to open up pretty soon. So I think the goal is to, if anything, empower the chamber and say, we have these funds ready for you. We just need to see X, Y, and Z. And that probably consists mostly of just the executive director and, some amount of time that person has spent in the role. But what we're proposing is that the application doesn't change at all. We just hold some of the funds for a bit once we receive them.
You're doing what James said last week. So.
you're following his advice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's all good, and if,
So we're
Right.
taking his advice verbatim.
yeah, we're not,
We're not ready to commit to it. To all the work involved in another grant. We've
right,
still got a lot
well,
of work to do with hiring an ED. and
yeah,
So
exactly,
that's what, so we'll update you after we talk to James.
that sounds great.
Thanks.
And just let us know what you want from us, and we will deliver it.
Yeah.
We're committed, we have a really strong.
Did I
board.
cover that well enough, Ben?
You sure did. And to Ashley and Randy's point, we will put together some language so that it's not as vague about when we feel we're at the point where we've passed the threshold and we do want to deliver the grant. We'll be very specific about that. We'll put it in writing, and we'll all be clear-eyed about it. We're really good about that stuff in this office. So we'll set that metric for success, and we'll keep the board abreast of it. But in the meantime, we just want to make sure that we get those funds to Moab Community Childcare and that the chamber has the funds on the horizon.
It's great. We really appreciate the support of everyone, and we are going to get on to a brighter moment.
Absolutely agreed. And with that, we will adjourn.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.